Chapter 19, Hartford, Connecticut, August 1967. Hartford is a fine town. We have no problems here. It is those outside agitators that are stirring up all the trouble. Ann Usello, Mayor of Hartford. I had just returned from a grueling fact-finding trip to Israel. Jet lag was still with me, but the city of Hartford was on fire. There was little time to rest. The very night after I arrived back, I found myself immersed in the atmosphere of hate that was spreading across my town. Ironically, I was preparing my notes for a piece that I was doing on the Middle East and the ever-present subject of racism when I was asked to act as a liaison between the mayor of Hartford and the Black and Puerto Rican caucuses. Early one morning, after spending most of the previous night at the local police station, the phone rang, and once again, Leroy Moten came into my life. Leroy Moten is in jail, I asked. Are you sure it's the same Leroy Moten from Selma, Alabama? I asked the question smiling because I was sure that it was a case of mistaken identity. I'm positive, came a reply from my close friend, the Reverend Charles Pendleton, director of the Human Rights Council of the Connecticut Council of Churches. He was arrested here in Hartford last night, and he was charged with arson and resisting arrest. Arson? Leroy? It's got to be another Moten. Well, Dave, it might be, because we only have the name, but no one's allowed to see him. Charles, does that mean that he doesn't have a lawyer? Is he still at the station cell block, or have they moved him? Were you able to get any information out of the police? As far as I know, he's still here in a cell. Okay, I'll be right down. All the way to Hartford, Connecticut police station, I kept saying to myself that it must be another Leroy Moten. I had spent most of the night before bailing some people out who I knew were not involved in any illegal acts, but were simply caught in the dragnet. I also spent some time getting the parents of the younger ones through the police lines to get their children. The city was still burning. The pungent odor of old, burning, painted wood being doused with water and the smarting, irritating smell of the tear gas mixed in made the air almost impossible to breathe. What would Leroy Moten be doing here, I asked myself. I could not visualize Leroy in the angry, leaderless, destructive mob that had rampaged through the city during the night. Leroy, I told myself, would be the last one to get involved in that. By the time that I had reached the ramp leading off the highway and into the city, I began to tense up. I did not go to Chicago, but I knew that Leroy did. I remember the pathetic sight of Martin Luther King begging the white community to give him a victory, even a small one, in order to prevent violence. I watched the people of that Chicago suburb welcome the marchers with bricks and bottles, and as the cameraman panned their faces, I saw the same expressions worn by the rednecks in Philadelphia, Mississippi. I couldn't help thinking of Leroy as I watched the news. I knew what a heartbreak Chicago must have been for him. He expected the movement to accomplish so much more in the North. What do I do now, I asked myself. Suppose that he has thrown a Molotov cocktail. Suppose that he has rejected the philosophy of his beloved Dr. King and turned to violence. Do you, Mr. White Man, good guy, still support him? I never gave myself a chance to think about the decision that I knew that I would have to make soon. I walked right into Captain Benjamin Goldstein's office. Ben, you're holding a young man here from Selma, Alabama. His name is Leroy Moten. He's being held in a cell, and I understand that he hasn't been able to contact a lawyer or call anyone. Ben, if this is the same kid that I knew down south, I doubt very much that he's guilty of any violence. But that's beside the point right now. I'd like to see him, even if just for a few minutes. Is he here? The captain reached for the phone. You got a Leroy Moten up there? Okay, listen. I'm sending a guy named Truskoff up to see him. Nope, there's no reason for him to go in. He can just stand by the outside door. Yes. David Truskoff from the American Friends Service Committee. Just for a minute or two. The captain turned to me, still holding the receiver in his hand. Take the elevator up to the 6th floor and knock on the first door on your right. I noticed that he did not hang up the phone as I left, and I knew that he would be giving the jailer further instruction. When the door opened, the guard stood in front of me and nodded over his shoulder, but he didn't move. I immediately realized that I was only going to be able to call to Leroy from where I was. Leroy, Leroy Moten. Who's that? It's me, Dave Truskoff. Hey, Mr. Truskoff. How are you? I could not mistake that voice. Never mind how I am. What the hell are you doing in here? I do not know. Ask the man. When you find out, tell me. I peered around the guard's shoulder, and I could make out the smiling, bespectacled face of Leroy as he pressed his body against the cage like wire mesh over the cell bars. Leroy, have you been to court yet? Nope. Have you called anyone? I don't know who to call here. I don't have nobody's number. I didn't plan on getting arrested. All right, try and relax. I'll be in court when you get there. I'll see if I can get you a lawyer. Hey, Mr. Truskoff, call SCLC in Atlanta. Ask Andy to give you the name of a lawyer up here. Okay, I'll see you when they take you into court. The guard was closing the door before I started my last sentence, and I had to shout it as I backed out into the hallway. I took the elevator down and met Charles Pendleton, who was still trying to get the younger ones released to their parents without bail. He looked like he hadn't even been to bed yet. He told me that he got some sleep back in the office in the Connecticut Council of Churches. I took him up to a nearby coffee shop for breakfast. From there, I put in a call to Andy Young. Hello, Andy. This is David Truskoff in Hartford, Connecticut. Yes. How are you? I'm fine, Andy, but I do have a small problem. Leroy Moten is in jail up here. He's been charged with arson and resisting arrest. He was picked up this morning and... Leroy Moten? For arson? Yes, I was very surprised, but we do not know what it's all about yet. The way things have been happening, maybe... I doubt it. Not Leroy. What can I do? Andy, there was a time when I could get bail money with one phone call and get pledges from lawyers to work on cases. But between the anti-war effort and the city riots, my sources are all tapped out. My Jewish friends are giving money to Israel, and the churches refuse to help anyone who's been arrested for burning or looting. I can understand that, but we have a lot of innocent people up here in jail. I know, Dave, but Hartford is just one town. We have people in jail all over the country. We're in the same boat. Our lawyers are all tied up. There's no money. It just has to be raised locally. I wish I could help more, but I can't. I'll give you the names of some people in New York that you can call. Have you called any of the NAACP attorneys? No. Well, here's a list. That's all I can do. Tell Leroy to call me when he gets out. I wrote down the names, and after 2 calls, I realized what a waste of time it was. While I received much sympathy, there were, as Andy said, people in jail all over the country, and bail money was just not available. I knew that I would have to put up my house again. Tape 5, Part 1. Recorded in the Friends Meeting House in West Hartford, Connecticut. Leroy, so much has happened in the last 2 years, and so much of it has been negative. At least that's the way it seems to me. I know that there are some who say that the burning has brought the North to attention. I can understand the frustration and the need to lash out. Hell, that's why so many minorities went into contact sports like boxing and football. There was a time when there were so many angry Jews who became boxing champions like Max Baer and Kid Kaplan and Maxie Rosenblum and others. When I was a kid, many college football teams contained the names of children of European immigrants who suffered through the Depression. They wanted to hit someone too. I understood the need, but I didn't understand the goal of burning down one's own community. Mr. Truskoff, you don't know how it was. To tell you the truth, Mark Harris cried one night in New Haven when he was telling some people about what happened up in Chicago, and I felt so sorry for him. He had sent all his friends, and lots of them borrowed money to come to Chicago to participate in the Cicero March. Dr. King said he's going to lead a march from Chicago into the white suburb of Cicero. Me and Mark, we both feel that this march is very important because everybody is saying that we can't afford to get turned around again. If we get thrown out of Chicago and don't accomplish nothing, like the better housing that we promise, then the nonviolent movement is dead. When the march was called off, Stoney Cook, Mark Harris, and others who was working there, they didn't know what to say to all them people who borrowed money to come down. Now all them black nationalists and them Chicago gang leaders was already making fun of the nonviolent movement. It all started okay. When we had a meeting in a church, it was always so filled that we had to put speakers outside. In a church. It was all we could do to hear Dr. King. When he said we're going to Cicero, all the people seemed like they with us. Sure, we all scared. I tell people that Mayor Daley and his police, they ain't no worse than Mayor Smitherton and his police in Selma. We kept the singing going, and I felt like the people's all with us. They wanted to go, and I think that if we did go, we would have had more support. Everybody would see that we mean to stay here till we accomplish something, and they would all join in. The Klan was there with their bedsheet costumes. It worries some of the local people, but not us. We all used to that crazy stuff. The trouble was that SCLC only goes into a town to help the movement that's already there. No one wanted to step over the local leadership that already formed because they got to stay there and continue to work. You can't take over the local leadership. That was what SCLC tried to avoid in Mississippi. The local leadership have got to have a say in the decisions. What I'm saying is, you just can't blame Dr. King for calling off the Cicero March. Even so, he did get the city to make lots of promises, which I know don't mean much, but it still shows what we could have done if we all stuck together. I know that all the peoples that come up with us from the South was all very disappointed, like me. You know, I've been telling everybody that now we're going to show these Chicago gang leaders what we can do. I expected that when we get to the north, into Chicago, we're going to have a lot of whites with us. I figure that there's a lot more poor whites living in the north that needs the housing and other things, and that they're going to participate. When we have arguments amongst ourselves in the South, we try and hide it from the newsmen, and when we march, we're together. In Chicago, it was businessmen and the local ministers and lots of so-called leaders that wanted more to get their picture in the papers. They resent Dr. King because all the cameras follow him. We also have all those who are telling black people to get guns and to burn, baby, burn. I know that Stokely and others is worried about blacks getting a nonviolent image because they're going to get beaten and gassed like they did in Mississippi, and that's going to be the end of it. I think that SNCC, CORE, and SCLC would have worked together because, like always, a march would have forced us together. The worse the rednecks in Cicero act, the more support we're going to get. That's what I thought. I made up my mind to leave Chicago right after I heard that the march was called off. I'd been going to places and making speeches and recruiting for SCLC. I remember one place I went and Stokely was there. He made me mad because he said all the girls should watch out for me. Sure, I like the girls, but he make it sound like I'm pestering them, and you know I never do that. I know he was just fooling, but I was still telling the kids that Dr. King is right, and his way is the only way we got. I wanted them to respect us. I told them through the power of nonviolence, we was going to make all peoples, black and white, free. And we're going to help poor peoples get better education and better housing. I knew that once everybody heard on the radio that the march had been called off and that a deal was made with the city of Chicago, it would be hard for me to say anything to the kids for a while. I knew that everything was going to fall apart. It's funny. On Wednesday, we hear Dr. King make that great speech in that crowded church, and I feel that we're going to be in Chicago for a while. We are really going to accomplish something here. Then, just 2 days later, we hear about the agreement, and it's all over. All us staff guys feel like we did in Canton, Mississippi. Seemed like the dog ate our steak. Everybody was saying the same thing, like they don't understand it. Lots of guys looking for places to go and money to get there with. If they ain't working for SCLC staff and there ain't no projects to work on, they may as well leave. Nobody wants to stay in Chicago. Mark Harris and I work together in Alabama and Mississippi and Chicago. We're close friends. And when he asked me, do I want to go to New Haven, Connecticut with him, I say, sure. Again, Leroy paused and looked down at the tape recorder. He suddenly seemed so much older than the boy that I had left in Mississippi. Leroy, I asked, wondering if he wanted to continue. I'm still a bit confused. I know that I've been away in the Middle East for a while, but why didn't you leave a message at my home that you were in Connecticut? I told you that if you ever came to this area to please call me and we could get together. I learned that you were here when Charles called me to tell me you were in jail. Again, he said, and for the first time since he came back from visiting his mother in Alabama, I saw that genuine Leroy smile. Okay, you came here from Chicago, and then what happened? I cannot believe that you seriously involved yourself with the Burn Baby Burn crowd. I wish you had called me. I was always going to call, Leroy said. But you see, I met John Barber in Atlanta one time. He said that he was doing some work for SCLC. I didn't know what that was, but I know that he didn't get along too well with the other staff peoples. John graduated from college, and he was always talking about how he was going to be the movement biographer. When he first told me that he was working on a book, I thought it sounded like a good idea, and he asked me to come to New Haven to tell him what it was like to be raised in Klan country. You know him. You know how he talk. He said that he never lived in the South, and he needed me to help him with his book and give him information on what it was like. He told me in Atlanta that if I ever needed a job, I could work for him. He said that he had a business in Hartford. I was kind of leery of him, and I got my own job in a clothing store in New Haven. It was a training program for people that wanted to be salesmen. I liked it a lot, but he kept after me, and finally I quit my good job to go and tend bar in his bar room. He said that we would work on the biography of the movement. We never got nothing like that done, because John, he was always talking about he gonna do this and he gonna do that. The first time that I realized that I made a mistake was when Stokely come to New Haven to speak, and I go there with John. I wanted to say hello to Stokely, but first thing I know, John jump up after Stokely speak and say that he used to work for Dr. King, but now he can't follow him no more. He say that Stokely right, and we must now support him. You know, Mr. Truskoff, I never criticize what Stokely say when he tell people that what is wrong. I always agree with that, but we already know what's wrong. I remember when Malcolm X come to Selma, we all worried because the newspapers say you're going to make the peoples there violent. But all Malcolm do is tell the peoples that they're suffering, and we already know that. Black peoples now just want to hear what you're going to do to make it better. That's all. Dr. King changed a lot of things, not just in the South, but all over the country. But John, he never say nothing about how he going to do it. He just say we got to do it. I really wanted to leave Connecticut just to get away from him, but I wasn't sure about where I want to go. I have it in the back of my mind that those that killed Viola still free, that I can convict them of murder, and maybe they want to see me killed too. I decided to stay out of Selma for a while. Remember those Klansmen still out there free? The summer when the riots began in New Haven and Hartford, I stayed out of them. I knew that a lot of friends was involved, but I stayed out because I knew that nothing was going to be gained, except the bail bondsman going to make a pocket full of money, and people's going to go to jail for nothing. Kids was tearing up the town mostly because they didn't know what else to do. They hear about the riots in Watts and Newark and all them so-called leaders. They wants to get their pictures in the paper too, and they don't have any ideas better than to say, we got to burn down the town. So the younger kids, they go on do it. To some of them, it sounded like a good idea. I was calling my friends in other parts of the country, and they was all saying the same thing was happening where they at. A black get arrested, or some white cop beat a black person, or shot a black person like they done in West Hartford, and the kids all say, we got to burn. I tried for a while. I kept speaking to small groups. I would say that white cops been doing that a long time, and I agree we got to stop it now. But I don't see where burning down your own house is going to stop it. Guys are beginning to get mad at me when I talk like that. What's the matter, Leroy? One of my old friends say. You got one of them white women? He was my friend, too. They start to have meetings in my apartment. You see, John owned the building, and he feel like he had a right to come in and meet in my apartment. After a while, they all stop asking me to join because they know how I feel. All the time they talking a bunch of junk, but they got no program. Sometimes I say that all their speeches they doing about riots and how one little match going to change America sound foolish to me. I wonder if somebody took a person like John and say, okay, you now the president, what you going to do? He'd be tongue-tied. Everybody respect him because he graduated from an important university, but he ain't saying nothing. Mr. Truskoff, you know what makes me so mad? Is how easy the man beat us. We got us all divided again. When them guys in the cities was making fun of Dr. King and shouting to burn, we was burning down our own communities, and them police was shooting and gassing us and arresting us. That man must have really been laughing because he know that black people gonna get nowhere without no leader. I remember Sheriff Clark and Colonel Lingo and Wilson Baker and all them in Selma. They wasn't laughing when the nuns and the senator's mother and all them white peoples line up with the Black Panthers to march across that bridge, they wasn't laughing. No, sir. They looked so sad because they knew that they was beat. Well, I didn't know what to do. There was no more movement. I couldn't be with the guys that was meeting in my apartment, and I couldn't be against them. I hate to admit this, but for the first time in my life, I took a drink with alcohol in it. Leroy pushed his chair back and put his hand on the top of his head. He drew his lips closed tight, and I could hear the heavy breathing coming from his nose. Was that when you were tending bar for John Barber? I asked. I noticed that Leroy's mood was changing. The quiet, neatly furnished library in the Friends meeting house remained silent for at least a full 60 seconds before he lifted his eyes and tried to smile. Yes, you see, I feel like I had no friends. It all started to get real bad when John started making them wild speeches. He's saying things like, we're going to get better jobs, better housing, better education, or we're going to burn this town down. We're going to bring America to its knees. I was so confused, Mr. Truskoff. I don't know where he going. I know that he a well-educated man. He own a bar, he own the apartment that I live in, and he own a business in New Haven. He doing real well. But he going to get us all in jail, or worse, and I can't see what it's going to accomplish for civil rights. So I ask him, after we burn down our own community, then what? He just gets all mad. One time John making one of them speeches, and here come a big man standing alongside of me. At first I thought he was a black detective that I had never seen before. I figured maybe he FBI or something. He say to me, that man your friend? He mean John. I say, yeah? He say, well, you better check him. I know you too. You better check yourself. I said, what do you mean? He put his hand in his pocket and he say, you better not start some shit because I'll blow you both away. Later at the bar, they tell me that he sells drugs and girls, and he don't want the neighborhood full of police because his customers won't come here to buy nothing. I'm thinking, oh man, how many enemies do I have? I sure don't need no more. I looked at Leroy and I tried to make eye contact, but he was avoiding me. He was shaking his head and looking down at the floor. Without looking up, he said, in Selma, when somebody said drugs, I figured they made of aspirin or something. He looked up and smiled. When I heard you call me in that jail, I felt so much better because I knew that SCLC and the movement was still out there. Somebody gonna come get me. Leroy, let's talk about that. I wasn't sure that you were not going to be convicted. The arson charge could have put you away for a long time, I said, enjoying his loud laughter for the first time that day. You telling me? You think I wasn't worried? It all started with one of them having them crazy meetings that they was having in my apartment. Like I said, they didn't ask me to participate no more. One night, a whole bunch of guys was out there, and one guy, I don't remember who he was, he come running in and he say, the market burning. Most of us don't pay him no mind, but pretty soon another guy come in and he say there are fires all over the place, and the police and the fire engines are down the block. We all run out to see, and John say, see, what I told you, this town gonna go up in smoke just like Newark. Ain't that beautiful? One guy look at me and say, he talk like that here, and he gonna get us all in jail. I nod my head. The next morning I took my bath, and I come down to open the bar at 9 o'clock. I get breakfast at the restaurant and carry it over to the bar. There was extra activity that morning because it was East Indian Day, and they were planning to have a parade. About 10 in the morning, here comes some policeman to the bar. A detective asked me my name, and I say, Leroy Jerome Moten. He asked, where do I live, and I tell him. I give him my New Haven address because all my stuff there. I was truly hoping that I could leave that bar and John Barber soon. I know that the police already all know that. He say, okay, and he start to leave. But I ask him why he asked me all these questions. He make me laugh because he say, we got a complaint that somebody was throwing beer cans out the door into the road. I say, not here, no sir. We only have draft beer and beer in bottles. We don't carry no cans. He say, okay, and he leave. I didn't think much about it till about 5 o'clock when here come that same detective and he asked me my name again. I look out the door and I see about 10 policemen out there and I say, oh Lord, what's this? The detectives say, Leroy Moten, come here. So I walk around the bar and I go over to him and he look at me and he say, I have a warrant for your arrest. Then he read it to me. And then he did something that made me laugh. But I put my hand up so he couldn't see me smiling. He handed the warrant over to this black policeman, who handed it to me. Everybody in the bar laughed, even the policeman. I took it and I read it. Then I say, "What you talking about, firebombing, arson? That's crazy." He say, "Well, come on, that's the charges." I ask him who make the charges, and he treat me like a child. He say something about how the system work, and the judge make them charges. I want to ask him, was the judge there? Did he see Leroy Jerome Moten do that? Instead, I told him to wait a minute, because I got to get somebody to watch the bar. I can't lock up at 5 o'clock. I told one of the customers to go on over to the pool room and get James Brown. When I say that, one of the policemen run out to get James and serve him with a warrant too. But I later learned that they didn't even know who he was. I went around the bar to take the money out of the register, and here come John Barber. He squint his eyes at me like he do, and he say, "Leroy, what's wrong?" I told him, "Arson," he say. "Arson? That's crazy." He no sooner say that than when the policeman touch his arm and they ask him, "You John Barber?" When John pulled his arm away and told him that he was, the policeman said that they had a warrant for his arrest too. And everybody laughed. But this time I wasn't thinking that nothing is funny no more, because I can see that what is happening. They trying to get everybody associated with John. I figure we in trouble. I hear John yelling at the police, "I am a tax-paying citizen, and I want to call my lawyer. You cops with them tin badges are going to find out that you can't keep doing this to us." One of the policemen asked me, "You going?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going." And I grab all the money out of the register, and I put it in my pocket. The policeman grabbed my arm and twisted back and pushed me all the way out to the police car. I told him that he was just as bad as the police in Alabama, and I say it loud, because I want the black policeman to hear me. Then I look to the other side of the car, and I see a detective there holding a gun, and I say to myself, there ain't no place in the country that's any different. While we waiting for them to get John Barber in the car, I see James Brown walking by. I didn't know that they're going to arrest him too. So I call him over and I say, "Hey James, come here," because I want to give him the keys to the register so that somebody can open the bar in the morning. He no sooner get to the car when the detective with the gun asks if he James Brown. And when he answers yes, they say, "Well, we got a warrant for you too." And then they push him in the car. I felt bad, but James told me not to worry about it. When we get to the jail, we found out that they had already arrested another James Brown. That one that they arrested the night of the fires with a gas can in his car, and they got lots of charges against him. They claim that he say we all in on it. I only know one James Brown, and I know that he didn't do no firebombing. They kept us in jail that night, and we went to court the next morning. I remember the look on your face when the judge didn't appoint me any lawyers like we asked him to, and he set bail at $30,000. They make John's bail even higher because he also charged with inciting a riot. I see you give me the thumbs up when they take me out and carry me over to the Sim Street jail. I had to take a cold shower. There wasn't no hot water. As soon as I get out of the shower, a guard come in and he say, "Get ready, you going?" I say, "Where?" He don't answer. Soon 2 policemen come in and put this big belt around me that had a buckle in the back. I'm wondering to myself, oh Lord, what they gonna do now? He took handcuffs and he snapped them on my wrists, and then he snapped them on the belt. He half dragged me back out to the car. They drove out of town and down the highway. When they turned off the highway onto this narrow road with lots of trees, I began to figure they up to something. Every time the car would slow down for a curve or one of them bumps in the road, I would say to myself, they chased me out of Selma, Mississippi, and Chicago. Now they're going to kill me in Hartford, Connecticut, where everybody's supposed to be free. I was thinking that they're going to claim I tried to escape or something. You know, Mr. Truskoff, all they had to do was come for me and tell me where we going and why. They didn't want me to be able to talk to anyone, just like they do in Selma. But they put that belt around me and they drug me out without saying nothing. All the way I kept feeling they was really going to do it this time. All during that ride I kept thinking about Miss Viola Liuzzo. Maybe this arson thing is just a hoax and they still want to get rid of me because of that. What they was really doing was moving us all around the state so that it would be hard for us to have visitors. They didn't want us to talk to anyone, even a lawyer, until they were sure of their case. Leroy stopped and again shook his head. He looked down at the floor, and for one emotional moment, I saw his eyes water. He rubbed them and he looked up and smiled. When I heard that you arranged for my mother and my brother to come down and see me, I began to relax a little bit. Can you imagine? They had to get special permission from a judge, and then they had to get somebody to carry them down there to see me. They kept me in there waiting for trial for 21 days. I didn't know where the others were, and I didn't know what was happening with the case. I remember that cop said to the other man, who say he's James Brown, said that we all in on it. That told me that they was making some kind of a deal with that James Brown to put us all away for a while. I was hoping that you had called Andy and that somebody was going to get me a good lawyer. I knew that the kids was still tearing up New Haven and still burning up in Hartford. I knew that all the judge had to do is say guilty, and Leroy Jerome going to get himself 10 years. After I stayed there for 3 weeks, not knowing what's going on, they take me back to the Sim Street jail in Hartford, and they put me in solitary confinement. The jailers say, like in Selma, that they doing that for my own safekeeping. I ask him how come I've been safe in the other jail for 21 days and I ain't safe now. My friend James Brown, he was in the cell behind me, and he told me that the jails are full. They got no place else to put us, he said. They even have guys in there from New Haven that been arrested during the riots because the New Haven jails is full. I say to James, you know all this mess is making the man real mad. I feel like we're going away. James, he laughed. He said, maybe John Barber right. Maybe we finally got the man's attention. He was right about that. We got the man's attention all right. James, he always trying to make me feel better by teasing and making me laugh. He would say, hey, Leroy, I'll bet your old lady and my old lady out there having a good time while we in here. One time I called out, hey, James, there's a dead rat in my cell. He laughed. He thought I was fooling. But I called the jailer and told him there's a rat in my cell. He said, that ain't no rat, Leroy. That's your dinner. Later I learned that the city planned to tear that old jail down, and the peoples all here are worried because then all them rats gonna run loose all over the neighborhood. I finally fell asleep, and the next morning all they bring me for breakfast was bread and water. I asked them how come they say that that's all they can give prisoners in solitary. I threw it on the floor, and I told them the rats can have it. I said that I'm going on a hunger strike. The guard got real mad then, and he said that I think I'm some hotshot or something, and that if I think I can make trouble for him, he's going to come in my cell, and he's going to beat the hell out of me. I was beginning to believe that I'm in for a lot of suffering here. About an hour later, here come the man with the belt again. He'd take me over to the courthouse. Harry Holgren, the lawyer that you got from me, was there, and he was already arguing for them to reduce the bond. I can't tell you how glad I was to see the both of you. I felt so much better when I hear how Harry speak in the court, because I know right away that I got me a fine lawyer. All he asked me to do was be truthful. He said, Leroy, it's going to be all right. All you have to do is tell the truth, and I'll do my job. He sure done his job, even though the judge was still afraid of public opinion, because the riots was still going on, and he only lowered the bond to $20,000. They took me back to the Sim Street jail, and I was wondering if they're going to take me back to the other newer jail. When they come for me a little while later with that damn belt, I was sure that that's what they're going to do. To tell you the truth, I was relieved, because it was a much nicer jail. When he twisted my arms back and he grabbed that belt, I asked the policeman if we're going back to the other jail, and he said, nope, you going to court. I was so disappointed because I was sure that they'd made a mistake. I told them that well, you going again. When I got to the courthouse, Harry Holgren come over to me, and he asked how come I come back. He smiled that nice smile of his, and he said, I'm going to try to get you out on bond. How you holding up? This must be an awful experience for you. Again, Leroy looked down at the floor. He raised his head and picked up the mic from the tape recorder and looked at it and then put it back again. It was a maneuver to hide his emotion. You know, he continued with watery eyes, when you've been through something like that, and then you got somebody like him, and then you know that he really worry about you, then you feel so much better. You're not alone no more. You know, I had heard that the judge refused to lower John's bail, but he put up all his property, and they had to let him out. They took me into the courtroom, and the judge asked me if I understand everything that he say, He asked me if I understand what my lawyer tells me about being in court on a certain day and all that, and that I shouldn't leave town. It makes you feel so low. First they drag you around with that belt. Then they make you eat garbage food. Then they put you in solitary for nothing. Then they bring you into a room and they talk to you like you some dumb animal. He kept asking me if I understood. I felt like saying, if you can understand it, then I can. When I got out, I went straight to my apartment where I knew that my mother and my brother were waiting. We all had a long talk before they went on back to Alabama. The day that I went back to court, the first thing that I see is Harry Holgren, and he's smiling. I'll never forget that smile. He told me, "Leroy, don't worry. I think that we can get them to drop the charges." My heart started to pound when he said that, because I told my mother to get a long prison sentence. I asked Mr. Holgren how. Well, I read the report, and they're all mixed up. They don't know the names of the people that are supposed to be involved. The man that they really wanted was named Brown, but it was a different Brown than your friend. What they did was arrest 2 Browns, but James was the wrong one. When court started that afternoon, I listened to the way Mr. Holgren talking to that judge, and I smiled at James, because I know that both of us is going home. Everybody in the courtroom listened when Mr. Holgren speak. I knew that we was going home by the look on the prosecutor's face and the judge's face. They was going through some motions, but they looked like the sheriff in Selma when the nuns take their place in line. They knowed it was over. Someday, I hope I can thank Mr. Holgren right. I kept trying to say more than just thank you. He said that he wouldn't take no money, and he never asked me for any. After the judge and the prosecutor went into their chambers and come out and dismissed the charges, Mr. Holgren took me to have something to eat in a nearby restaurant. We duck away from the newspaper people and all the cameras. I tried to explain how grateful I was, but I didn't do it well. I know that some public defender or young lawyer might not be able to do what he done. He told me that he was once a prosecutor and that he knew it would all work out. Well, you know, the man went into that courtroom and took over. I mean, when he speak, he was in charge. He told me that he knew all along that I was innocent, but with the way things were happening and all the rioting in the streets, that there was no telling what the judge might do, because all judges is political animals. He told me that I better stay out of trouble. I promised him that I would. Remember when you met me later and you was laughing because that police captain told you that he was informed that I was a tough militant leader that was brought in from Chicago to start the riots and the burning? We all laughed. That night I got to wondering what Mr. Holgren meant by staying out of trouble. I hope that he didn't mean to stop my civil rights activity, because there was no way that I was going to do that. Chapter 20, April 1968, Hartford, Connecticut. Martin Luther King was shot and killed at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. On April 4th, 1968, I was in the Simsbury, Connecticut Junior High School gymnasium watching my daughter perform with her gymnastics class. The principal sought me out to inform me that he had just heard that Martin Luther King had been shot. I did not want to walk out on my daughter's performance. When I returned to my home and switched on the television set, there was the room at the Lorraine Motel in which I stayed, forming the backdrop for the horrible pictures of the assassination. All the arguments about violence and nonviolence that we had during the Mississippi March returned to me. I remember saying to my children, there's going to be uncontrolled rioting now, because there's no one that can stop the violence. Sporadic rioting and looting plagued the city of Hartford for months after Dr. King's death. I had left the American Friends Service Committee and pledged to myself that I would spend more time getting family affairs in order, but the situation was getting out of hand, and the National Guard was called in. After one terrible night of rioting, I felt compelled to do all that I could to avoid more bloodshed. I knew that the police had marked my yellow station wagon, but it didn't make any difference. I went directly to Leroy's apartment and knocked on the door. "Who is it?" a cautious voice asked, right next to the door. "Dave Truskoff," I replied. "What the hell do you want?" "Is Leroy here?" "No." "Well, let me in. I need to talk to you." The window next to the door had the shade drawn, and someone pushed it aside to peer out. Moments later, the door opened slightly, and I pushed my way in. Just before I closed the door, I shot a glance at the car parked across the street, with 2 men watching Leroy's apartment in it. I knew that they weren't local police. I assumed that they were FBI. What do you want? Someone asked in the dimly lit room. That's what I came here to ask you, I answered, adjusting my eyes to the darkness and nodding my recognition to the 4 or 5 young men in the room. That's a dumb question to ask us. Don't you read the papers? The voice surprised me. It came from a white woman who had just walked into the room from the kitchen. I peered out from behind the shade and the 2 men seated in the car across the street and noticed a local patrol car slow down as it passed them. Listen, I said, I don't have much time. You can talk about police brutality, housing, and jobs out on the street, but it's just plain dumb to have all this rioting and burning and the suffering that goes with it without a specific plan to offer the town if they should come to you with a compromise of some kind. Man, I don't know who sent you here. I know who you are, and I know what you've done and all that, but we can't make no compromises now. There is nobody in the mood to compromise. There are guys out there ready to burn this old damn town down. That includes the white section, too. Besides, we are the Black and Puerto Rican caucus, and we ain't gonna do nothing without our Puerto Rican brothers. We really got the man worried, because this is the first time that blacks and Puerto Ricans have united, and we don't want to do nothing to jeopardize that. We know that we got the man now, because he may be able to deal with us, but he has no idea how to deal with them. I'll bet there isn't one person over in that command post or at City Hall that even knows how to speak Spanish. A man sitting on the arm of the chair pointed his finger at me. Listen, everybody, he said, pushing his sunglasses back on his nose. We all know that we can trust this man, and I think that he's right. We must have something to present as formal demands to the city. I know that they're scared over there, too. And if they're not, they're crazy, because one more incident, one more arrest, one more person shot by a white cop, and we're going to be at war. You see all that firepower they got out there? They mean to use it. And them puny rifles of ours ain't going to do diddly. If nobody else is scared here, then you all crazy, because I can see people's getting killed, and it damn well may start with us. I think we ought to listen to the man. We got their attention now. Let's get something for it. I didn't like standing in front of the window, so I just sat down on the floor. Okay, I said. I know that I don't have to tell you that after all this has happened in the last few nights, this apartment has been the focus of the local police. They may have a listening device or something in here. So from now on, I don't want to hear anything about guns. I don't mean to be melodramatic, just sensible. They know that I'm in here. They don't know why. I don't want to hear anything about burning down the town. I came here to ask you what you would specifically ask for if the mayor came to you and asked for a proposal. The mayor, said another, seated on the floor next to me. You crazy, man. Will you all listen to this crazy fool? He's talking about the mayor. In the first place, we know that election time is just a short ways off, and all them folks at City Hall are crawling all over each other to show which one is going to be the toughest on us. I spent 4 years studying political sciences at Harvard, and what I learned was that patronage is politics, and politics is patronage. Look at this city and figure out how many beautiful contracts are going to be handed out to rebuild the damage that has been done. The city manager and the so-called mayor are drooling at the prospect. They want to be elected, and if the state militia shoots us all, they won't give a damn. His statement was greeted by a chorus of right on. Encouraged, the bespectacled old man continued. One more thing. We are not talking about our plans to tear up this town. What we are saying is that we know what will happen if we lose control. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure we have any. I looked at the bearded black man with the New England twang in his speech, and I watched the light bounce off of his small eyeglasses. I knew that he was right about the politicians, but the alternative was more violence and destruction, not to mention the possibility of the loss of more lives. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm just as frightened as anybody in this room, I said. My point is, the way to get control is to show the community that there is a purpose to all of this. They have to see that there's a program that you're striving for. They have to see that there is going to be something accomplished. I'm certain that no one here wants to see people jailed, gassed, and shot for nothing. Listen, said the man with the sunglasses. He adjusted them again and stood up. I think that this man is right. As a matter of fact, we might as well admit that we were saying the same thing that he's talking about last night. He turned to me. The trouble is that some of our people in jail, and we need to get them out. The other thing is that we don't want to make no deals without including our Puerto Rican brothers. The thing is, we all know what we want, but the trick is to find the right formula and the right person to address it to. The mayor has no power, and the city manager is going to do exactly what the party tells him to do. Before an election, not one of them would be caught dead talking to us. Okay, I said, suppose I write a list of demands with a statement that you can give to the press. The Harvard graduate smiled. Just what we need, a white leader. I understood that his bitter words were not addressed at me, personally, but at hypocritical, white paternalism. That knowledge did not temper my annoyance with negativism that would lead to delay. I was well aware of the arsenal buried inside the garage next door. I was also aware of the election year desire of politicians, from the governor on down, to avoid the label of being soft on crime. The possibility of a bloody confrontation existed. All right, I said, then you write it. Who cares who writes it? Let's just get it done. Scratching his beard with his fingertips, he smiled at me. Oh no, not me. If I write it, I would put in all the whereas or poverty agency lingo you guys learned in your social work classes. I'd wake them up with some street language, and I'd let them know that we're speaking for the people. All right, Dave, you write it. Then what? Asked the man with the sunglasses, and to show that we were reaching a serious stage, he yanked the sunglasses off. Then we present it to the city. Excuse me, you present it to the city via the mayor. I told you, man, the mayor won't see us. I think that he will. If he can reach a peaceful solution to all this, it may enhance his chances in the election. That's the way I'll approach him. For the first time, I realized that the others in the room had drawn closer to the three of us, and it was obvious that they all agreed. Someone made another pot of coffee, and we sat there listening to the usual grievances about rats, police brutality, lack of housing, segregated schools, lack of jobs, and all the things that ghetto dwellers have been complaining about for far too many years. But there was one new ingredient, a growth of the seeds planted by Malcolm X. There was desire for manliness, the need to escape from the causists and the paternalists and the do-gooders. The program that they wanted had to be their own. An ominous-looking huge man who hadn't spoken before stood up as though to make a speech. We went through all the trouble of getting our Puerto Rican brothers together with us on this. Now we have this white man telling us what to do. I don't think that's going to look very good over there. I was relieved to hear the door open and two women walk in. They were quickly briefed, and it was easy to determine that their input was important. They both had their long black hair beaded, and I enjoyed their warm greetings. Yes, 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 one of them shouted, looking me right in the eye. We have no program that really communicates with the poor. You have these damn poverty agencies that are nothing more than political empires where politicians make their payoff and a lot of niggers go scuffling around for higher jobs. Once they get them hooked, they are money junkies. We want a program without a bunch of black toms and politicians dictating to us. You give one of them toms a briefcase and a title, and he's ready to go out into the street and tell all the frustrated people that they are out there rioting and risking their lives, that they should all just go on home. Look at me, they say. Things ain't that bad. Look at my nice white shirt and tie. Look at my suit. Look at my car. See, if you try, you can be white just like me. Well, I'm not interested, baby. This is geared to keep a few happy and the masses poor and passive. We want a program that is going to give my people some dignity of their own, and we better get it. What we want is a program like Breakthrough. The room became quiet except for the rattle of coffee cups. I peered out the window again, then sat back down. Everyone seemed to be waiting for me to respond to what she had said. Well, I said, knowing that what I was about to say was going to draw fire, that's going to be difficult, because if we use that terminology, all the bad publicity that came out about Breakthrough has had in this state. All of the leaders of that program in New Haven are in jail, and the scandal with the state highway department that just canceled its contracts with Breakthrough makes it almost impossible for the politicians to handle. Perhaps we can ask for some kind of program, but call it something else. The long ringlets of hair swished about her face as the very attractive black woman flashed her eyes at me. No, that is a slap in the face to our brothers and sisters in New Haven. We can't pass judgment. We don't know if they're guilty or not. The weak-kneed politicians in this town have got to learn to handle something from the black community that they don't like. Better that they get their fingers burned than the whole town burns down. As darkness approached, they had to get ready for more marches and speeches, more frustration, and perhaps more violence. I left. The same two men still sat in the same car, parked at the same street. After a terrible night of burning and looting, the business section of town returned to normal. But the black community now filled with debris, and it had police cruisers on almost every main intersection. Others drove slowly around the neighborhood. I knew that the same thing that everybody wanted to avoid was to substantiate the idiotic claims of some mayoral candidates that outside troublemakers were the cause of all the disturbances. It reminded me of the rednecks in Sunflower County, Mississippi, who told us, "These are our niggers. They're happy. Leave them alone." There was a press conference about to begin in the courtyard of John Barber's apartment complex. TV men were setting up their cameras, and police were moving into the courtyard to stand outside of the area designated for the press conference. I took advantage of the confusion to sneak into the apartment, and I was again surprised to learn that Leroy was not there. I was finally told that he was sent to wait out the riots in another town for his own protection. Some of the police still thought of him as a ringleader and were looking to arrest him again for something that would stick. "Did you write the statement?" I was asked. "Yes, I wrote it." "Okay, wait until everyone gets here so we can all hear it together. The Puerto Ricans are here too." When there were about 10 people in the room, I began to read. When I had finished, there was a moment of silence before my friend from the night before with the sunglasses began to nod his head. "I hope that you will forgive me for not using the names of those involved. Notes here do not indicate names. We never bothered with formal introductions and rarely referred to anyone by name, but my mind will never forget the faces." "Sounds good to me," he said. "How about you all here?" There was a general nodding of heads and murmurs of agreement. A deep baritone voice came from the kitchen. "Okay, what do we do with it now? Do we take it outside to the press conference?" Before anyone could answer, one of the women present said, "Hey, look at those guys. Those newsmen can see right in here. If anybody should open the door or a cop search us, like the one they did last night, then they want to know what this man is doing in here." The meeting was moved up the stairs, and I sat on the bathtub rim while others squeezed together partially in the bathroom and partially in the hall. The deep baritone voice answered his own question. "I don't think that we should even talk to the newsmen. I think that they'll just twist it all around anyway. Hell, proposals don't make half as good copy as riots do. They may not even use it, and then we'll have shot our wad for nothing." "Yeah," came a chorus of agreement. "Listen," I said, "I still say that we ought to be presenting this to the city via the mayor." "Hell," said the woman, whose beaded hair still hung about her shoulders. "I told you that he has an election coming up." "I know," I answered. "Let me tell you my opinion on all that. This man is in trouble. People are saying that the woman the Republicans are running can beat him. I was at the police station last night, and they were bringing kids in off the street. I heard him say that when he toured the city yesterday, he was stunned to see all the damage. What really worried him was that when he turned off the corner of Main and onto Albany Avenue, and all those Puerto Ricans were up on the roofs and hanging out the windows, shouting obscenities at him in Spanish, he said that it made a knot form in his stomach." There was loud laughter, and I continued, "He's really scared. This guy's family goes way back in this town. His brother was mayor before him. He likes being mayor. He wants to get reelected. If he can claim credit for heading off more violence, it may be helpful to him, if it's done right." For the first time that day, the man from Harvard, who was supposed to chair the press conference, spoke up. "I hope that isn't your motivation in all this. We are not the least bit interested in getting the mayor reelected." "No," I said, "that's not what I meant. All I'm saying is that he has to act somehow, and right now I'm willing to bet that he is sitting up nights trying to figure out how to act before the governor gets the credit for crushing the riots." Harvard pushed his small glasses back and looked at each face in the room. "Okay, call him and we'll go. All of us in this room will go and we'll meet him. We can't make any promises about anything, and if he starts some junk, like if we stop the marches and the trashing, he'll do something for us after the election, we'll all walk out, and there'll be nothing left to negotiate." He pushed his glasses back again and held his hand up for quiet, then turned to me. "Before you even call him, I think that we all ought to admit to ourselves that everybody in this community is damn mad at the police, especially after they shot that tear gas into apartments on the square last night. They had to evacuate all those families, and some of them with kids didn't have no place to go. We had some of them sleeping in the halls over here. It just shows you that the police are not different from any other police in America. Leroy learned that. If the police do a damn fool thing like that again, we can't stop nothing. What I'm saying is that we have to tell the mayor that. You know and I know that there are guns about, and those people are not going to listen to us when something like that happens again." There was no phone in the apartment, and I waited until everyone began to file into the courtyard before I dashed back to my car. I drove to the railroad station and called the mayor from the phone booth there. My notes here are clear and exact. The mayor, George P. Kinsella, struck me as being anxious and sincere about ending the violence, but he was still a politician. "Listen, Dave," he said, "we have a council and a city manager system in this town, and the title of mayor is just that, a title. I'm only a figurehead. I can't go around and hold secret meetings and make deals." "Pete, I'm not asking you to make any deals. I'm beginning to panic. I think the real violence hasn't happened yet, but Hartford, Connecticut has the potential to be worse than Newark, New Jersey, or any of the others. It's getting scary out there. The National Guard may be more of an irritant than a peacekeeper. I don't represent anyone but me. I'm just one worried citizen that knows that there can be bloodshed in this town by tomorrow. Contrary to what the papers say about ringleaders and all that, there isn't anyone on either side that has any real control, and the matter can easily get out of hand, as it did last night. Now what I'm asking you to do is this. Simply talk to a group. Find out just what it is they want you to do. It will give you and the council something to focus on." "Why me?" the mayor asked, obviously thinking about his campaign and how the press was going to view it. "Pete," I said, "figurehead or not, you're still the town mayor. You still represent the people of this town. The Black and Puerto Rican caucus wants someone to know that what their desires are, so that they can be expressed responsibly and the media can give it the attention that it needs. They think that that is the way to head off more violence. I can't make any promises or deals. Just come and listen," I said. I urged again, knowing that he wanted to. "I can't go there." "Pete, I am sure that I can get them to go anywhere that you decide, as long as it isn't the police station." "Okay, City Hall is deserted at this time. Come in the back entrance at exactly 6:30. Take the rear stairway right to my office, and I'll meet you there." "You will be with them, won't you?" "I think so." "No, David, you have to be there. You have to be the intermediary. I don't want to meet with them alone." "Listen, don't put yourself out on a limb. I don't know how anybody is going to react, and I can't make any promises." The mayor arrived exactly on time and ushered us all into his office. He slumped into his chair and indicated that we should all find places to sit. There was a moment of silence before the mayor let his eyes sweep across each face, and spreading his hands out on the desk before him, he said, "Okay, we have troubles. What do we do?" The deep voice spoke first. "We want our people out of jail." The mayor sighed and looked at me. I explained this all to David. "I am a ceremonial mayor. We have a council and manager system in this town. I do not have the power to do anything like that. I'm really just another member of the council who got the most votes. I can't make any deals or promises." Deep voice started to get up. "I knew it. Let's get out of here," he said. Waving his hand for everyone to remain seated, Mayor Kinsella pointed a finger at the big man who started to leave, and a dialogue between the two began. The mayor: "Wait, you said you had a proposal. Let me hear it." Deep voice: "You wouldn't understand it anyway." The mayor: "Just what the hell do you think I am? A lace-curtain Irishman? I'm a working man. I know what poor is. I've been there. I want to help, but as I said, I have little power. There are people out there that are screaming about law and order and are benefiting from all of this. They would love to catch me in here with you. If you've got a proposal, let's hear it. Maybe we can figure out a way to help each other and help this troubled city." There was an exchange of glances, and I think that I was expected to speak. But I just stared past the mayor until I heard that deep voice rumble again. All right, we have a proposal, but this isn't the place to present it. We want to be sure that the people of our community hear it. Here is what we would like you to do. 1, we must get our people out of jail. 2, we would like to have a march to City Hall and have you come out and listen to what we have to say. Then we would like to ask you for a public meeting of the council to discuss our proposals for a breakthrough program for this town. We want the hearings of Officer Gannon, the man who shot the black man, made public. We feel that if these requests are made, we can head off any more self-destructive violence that is now raging in your city. The mayor tilted his chair back, folded his hands behind his head and sighed. What is breakthrough? There was another moment of silence, and I could not avoid the eyes of almost everyone in the room. What they are talking about, I said, is a self-help program of, by, and for the people in their communities. Local people with professional supervision will be contracted by property owners to do the renovations and to assist in the building of new housing in their communities. Right now, outside, white landlords hire white contractors to do the work, but needed repairs are being put off because many property owners feel that the buildings will just be trashed again. If the people themselves do the work, and they were paid to do the renovations and repairs, such as painting, carpentry work, and making dirty basements into recreation halls, they would have pride in it, and they would protect it. That way, the landlord as well as the tenant would benefit. The whole town would benefit. This program has been tried successfully in other areas, and there is federal funding available. Pete Kinsella leaned forward, and for the first time, someone in the room smiled. I'll buy that, he said. I tried to be no more than a mediator or a liaison, but I got caught up in the excitement of the moment. Are you saying that you'll support it? I blurted. Well, I have to remind everyone that I can't make any promises. I have little power, he answered. Not wanting to see any backsliding, I pressed him. But you will publicly support it. From what I heard here, my answer to that is yes. How about the rest of it? Deep voice asked. The chair squeaked as the mayor tilted it back again and looked at the ceiling. Well, he said, let's review. I will talk to the prosecutor about getting some of the people released in time for the meeting to City Hall. Make your march tonight. Not to City Hall. There won't be anybody there. All the press will be at the police station. Don't march through town. Just to the police station, and I'll meet you there. I will publicly call for a special meeting of the council. I will state there that I think that the breakthrough program is a good idea and should be explored. I will ask that the community renewal team, board of directors be there. Hell, the poverty agency should be there. This violence is their failure. I cannot and will not do anything about Officer Gannon. That is completely out of my area. All the mayor can do publicly is support the police department. I wouldn't do anything else. If I even mentioned that case, I would be in serious trouble. I have no knowledge of the facts, and it's now in court. We all rose and quietly filed out. We were too quiet for one lone reporter, who had his ear to the door and was surprised when the mayor pulled the door open. Mayor Kinsella pointed a finger at him and said, "Don't print it before the meeting. I hope that you have brains enough to keep politics out of this and not to mention this meeting. You can blow this whole thing. We are all sick and tired of the burning and the violence. Maybe this will help, so use your brains for once and don't print it." It was getting dark as we started to drive back to Leroy's apartment. They were going to prepare for the march and get the people organized while I put the finishing touches on the statements that were going to be made that night. As we passed the housing projects, we were all shocked to see that the entire area was ringed by police and auxiliary police in brown uniforms carrying billy clubs. Prowl cars with large attack dogs in the back seats were parked in the front and the back of the main buildings. "Are they crazy?" someone shouted from the back of our car. "This damn place is going to explode all over again. You can't walk the halls now because the tear gas is still in most of the buildings. My cousin had to bring her kids to stay at our place. The people in those buildings would like to see some cop get it tonight, and those damn fool police look like they're trying to provoke something. How the hell are we going to march to the police station tonight? We'd never get through there. Besides, one little thing, one arrest, and we ain't going to have the chance to meet with nobody. There's going to be hell and fire in these streets." Chapter 21. The end of the beginning. City of Hartford. Hartford Police Station, 155 Morgan Street, Hartford, Connecticut. Council, Manager Government, proclamation of curfew. Deputy Mayor Kinsella, in his capacity as acting mayor, has declared the city of Hartford in a state of emergency. Accordingly, under the powers as Chief Executive Officer of the City of Hartford, I have ordered a citywide curfew effective from 7 p.m. tonight, September 2nd, 1969, until 5 a.m. Wednesday, September 3rd, 1969. Under the terms of the curfew, all restaurants, theaters, gasoline stations, places of public gathering, and stores, except those open for emergency and necessary operations, will be closed. All people are advised to stay off the street and sidewalks of the city, except those in official duty, those on their way to and from work, and those on business of an emergency nature. The curfew will be enforced, and all citizens, both resident and non-resident, are advised to cooperate to the fullest extent. Failure to obey this curfew will result in the arrest and prosecution of all violators. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and sealed the 2nd day of September, 1969. City of Hartford, Alicia Friedman, City Manager. The actions of the police everywhere in these situations always baffled me. I know that a potential violent riot is never an easy situation to tactically plan defenses for. It's not a matter of simply putting the facts into a computer and waiting for answers. Human emotions brought to a boil by fear and anger are not predictable. And when you add the smoldering fuse of politics, they are even less so. I dropped the group that was in my car off at the apartment and drove to the Hilton Hotel, where I knew that there was a line of enclosed phone booths, often used by a salesman. I tried to reach the mayor, but he wasn't in. I left a message, but time was short. It was dark now, and I headed for the police station. The usual parade of black clergy and black politicians passed through the halls, as they had since the riots had begun. I asked for Captain Ben Goldstein, head of the police community relations program. Ben was a broad man, and when he opened the door to the chief's office, I could see that the state director of the National Guard was conducting a meeting, but the captain's wide frame prevented me from seeing who else was inside. Ben kept his stern face on when he greeted me. "Yes, Dave, what do you want?" "Ben, I'm here to ask you to pull back your men from the projects and what looks like an army at the corner of Main and Albany Avenue. Those brown shirts look like Hitler's SS troops." "They are auxiliary police and trainees," he said. "I know, Ben, but they're provocative just by their presence. There is a group that wants to go out with some kind of armbands and a loud hailer to tell everyone to stay in their homes tonight because they're going to march down to the police station and meet with the mayor. They just can't do it with all those police and dogs there. Besides, with the curfew, they'll be arrested as soon as they start, and that will set off more violence. Just pull them back for an hour." Ben stepped further out into the hall, and pointing a finger at me, he said, "Dave, understand this. We are coddling nobody. If they want more trouble, we are going to hit, and we're going to hit hard. Do you understand that?" His voice was loud and stern, but the look in his eyes told me that the words weren't really meant for me. "For Christ's sakes, Ben, haven't you heard what I just said? They're trying to avoid trouble, but once it starts, nobody can stop it. They're asking you to help them keep it from starting again. That's all that I'm here to ask you." He stepped back into the doorway. "Wait here." I have no way of knowing how long he was gone. It was probably 10 minutes or so, but it seemed like hours. I stayed in the same place in front of the door, shifting my weight from one leg to the other, feeling the omnipresent tension of the crowded police station. Black faces peered out at me from behind the doors of the police chief's office as the captain appeared again and stepped out into the hall, leaving the door open behind him. "No deal," he repeated in that same stone turn, but the eyes still had the look of a man admonishing a dog while petting his head. "We will allow them to make a peaceful march down here, if the march is early enough, but we will remain ready for trouble, and you can remind them of what I said before." I didn't even bother to reply, nor did I waste time telling the members of the caucus about the captain's threat. There were a few moments of trepidation, When one of the members of the group was picked up for questioning as he made his way to the apartment, and the word spread that it was a double cross and the meeting at the police station was off. The young man arrested told the officers that he was on his way to meet with the mayor and asked them to call Ben Goldstein's office. They did, and they let the man go on his way. The public meeting with the mayor at the police station went very well, and the press coverage was excellent. I do not know who the editors of the two newspapers were that were functioning in Hartford at that time, but I assume that they were responsible for the tone of the reporting. It was exactly what we were hoping for. It was positive, and it set the stage for what we all hoped would be a very productive meeting in the City Council chambers at City Hall. Council Chambers, Hartford City Hall, September 18th, 1969. The cool September air accented the contrast as one stepped into the emotion-packed hearing room, already overheated by the many television camera lights and the bodies packed side by side from one end of the room to the other. After much jockeying by the politicians, all trying to get a favorable position for the television cameras, Deep Voice read the opening statement and list of demands that was to be debated by the council. We, the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus of Hartford, believe that the last 2 years have taught us that the paternalistic attitudes and programs administered by the so-called poverty agencies have not and cannot effectively deal with the problems of the unfairly labeled unreachable poor in our community. We therefore propose that the mayor and council take the initiative in calling a special meeting of the OEO Community Renewal Team Board of Directors for the purpose of creating a self-help development center to house an Operation Breakthrough program wherein independent indigenous people may acquire the pride and inspiration necessary to raise their own standard of living. We ask that a member of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus be invited to such a meeting to present specific proposals for such a program. We thank the mayor for the previous statement of support, and we are confident that the arrangements can be made for the early part of next week when our full presentation will be ready. As responsible citizens, the members of the Black and Puerto Rican Caucus abhor violence, but as human beings, we feel deeply about the disappointment and the degradation of our people. If we are to have a new beginning, police harassment must stop. We ask the police department to supply the means of identity and authority to a select group of young people in our community to serve as liaison between our people and the Hartford Police Department. The firing of tear gas into the homes of the residents of Bellevue Square clearly indicates the inability of the police department to understand the mood of our people. We ask the good citizens of Hartford to stop viewing their city from the center of Constitution Plaza and to come out and face reality. There was a loud applause at the end of each statement. The object was to make the statement as concise as possible so the TV sound bites could get the meat of the message in. Specifics could be brought up in the debate that we expected to follow, but as the flashbulbs popped and the cameras whirred, local Toms jumped in front of the cameras to make speeches and to shout irrelevant statements. Aspiring Black politicians hope to score with party leaders by showing the Blacks too can be in favor of law and order, and they condemned the group for all the violence of the past. Established politicians, with important elections just weeks away, sat in stony silence, obviously obeying the commands of party leaders not to get involved. Glances of suspicion began to reach me from members of the caucus as the meeting turned into a farce where the players were all vying for the valuable TV soundbite. Hopes were lifted slightly when it became clear that the mayor had fulfilled his promise and actually did get some of the arrested members out of jail for the meeting. When they appeared, the suspicious glances turned to smiles. But when John Barber, one of those released, began his inane stream of obscenities, the comic ending was brought to what proved to be an almost flawless exhibition of deception by those holding the power in the city. As the perspiring actors continued to perform, the plot became more obvious. The carrot was dangled, and they would watch the rabbit chase it for a week. When he was completely run down, they would snatch the carrot and stew the rabbit. I avoided the press, and I can remember speaking only once after the meeting, at the doorway leading to the street. One member of the caucus grabbed my arm and said, We ain't gonna get it, nothing. And I'm beginning to think that you knew that all the time. I am sorry, I said, knowing that he was probably right.